One. All right, so I'm recording. Hello, guys. We are part of the podcast crew for the Pre-Health Diaries, where we interview successful medical school applicants, among other types of pre-health fields. So yeah, my name is Sam.
I'm Artem.
All right, and our guest today is...
My name is Emanuel Mordechaev. I'm a third-year medical student at NYMC, New York Medical College.
All right, well, I'll just hit out the first question. Tell us about yourself. So what are you studying and where do you go?
So I went to Hunter College. I majored in human bio, which is a relatively new major. Minored in chemistry. After graduating in 2015, I went straight to medical school, New York Medical College. It's a pretty nice school. We have a nice campus.
To 2019, right?
I said 2015?
Yeah.
I started Hunter at 2015, graduated 2019. Then I went straight into medical school. So now I'm in my third year. Currently in third year, we do rotations, which is basically we're in the hospital observing different specialties. So I just finished OB-GYN, which is obstetrics and gynecology. And now I'm in my ophthalmology elective. So we just get to cycle through different things to see what we want to do as our career.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned Hunter, right? And that's really good for us because our program is based at Hunter. So you can really give us insight into how, you became successful in whatever. So, you could just tell us about the extracurriculars you did, whether it's clinical research, what clubs you were involved with, and as well, you could mention the pre-health advising office and who helped you along the way.
Sure. So I did a lot, so I might forget some stuff, but what I did mostly was MAPS, which is the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students. So basically what we would do is we would host events where physician speakers would come in. We had internists, cardiologists, people from different specialties would come and just do Q&A sessions with students. So it was pretty helpful to listen to physicians and hear, what they have to say. I even got a shadowing opportunity from just attending an event. And then I approached the doctor after and I said, hey, I'm interested in this field. Would you mind if I shadowed you? So I encourage students to, it's easy after class to just go home because maybe you don't want to be on campus, but networking can go a long way. It can seem intimidating, but networking is just basically you talking to people and eventually finding an opportunity that, suits your interests. So I did MAPS, which was one of the things I was, you should try to get an executive board position, which is either president, vice president, treasurer, or secretary. But obviously, there's only 4 positions in each club. So not everyone will be able to do that. But ideally, you want to aim for that kind of a leadership role because medical schools look at that and they, that's one of the things they look and appreciate, a leadership role. Besides MAPS, I was also part of, there was this thing called Golden Key Honor Society, which is basically, it's not a scholarship, but it's a club where if you meet certain requirements as far as GPA is concerned, you can join the club. So we would do book drives, we would do events to feed the homeless, things of that nature. So I was involved in that as well. I believe I was the secretary for that club. And also it's quality over quantity. You could be part of 15 different clubs, but not hold any leadership role versus be really involved in maybe 2 or 3 clubs. And I feel that would be, it would make your application look nicer because it shows that you're in a club for an extended period of time.
Commitment.
You want to help it grow. Yeah, exactly. So I also was part of a frat, which is obviously not a requirement to go into medical school, but I was in the AE Pi fraternity, which was nice too. I had a leadership role there as well. I was the treasurer. So we would just, make events. Sometimes we would also invite people to speak to students about different specialties in that club as well, or in that fraternity as well. And then besides that, for extracurriculars, I was involved with Red Cross. So there's a Red Cross chapter in Hunter College. And the project that I was involved in, we would install smoke detectors or fire alarms on the ceiling, which is pretty nice because you see some homes don't have that and people are not notified if there's a fire. So you feel you make a positive difference in people's lives by installing installing those fire alarms. I must have did like maybe a few hundred hours over the course of my 4 years. And then a lot of other opportunities, but I don't want to bore people.
Yeah. So
I guess just like a quick rundown.
Yeah. And like to just like end that question would really be about the pre-health advisors, right? And
right,
who would you say is like the most important, and just in general, like emphasize the importance of, you know, making connections with them over the years.
So a lot of people are integral to people's success if you want to go into medical school. Like I definitely wouldn't have done it without all my mentors. Camille Jackson is a great mentor to have. She's part of the pre-health department. I formed a relationship with her early on. She helped to coordinate events for MAPS as well as PHO, which is the pre-health organization. So if you can just, you know, come to an event and introduce yourself to her, say that you're part of the program and you'd like to be more involved, that would help you a long way. Also, Dr. Klein was very helpful. She was part of the YALO scholarship program. So Dr. Klein ended up writing my committee letter, which is what a lot of students get when they apply to medical school. So she was really integral in me applying to medical school and eventually matriculating. And also Nina was very helpful as well. She helped proofread a few of my essays, and she's a really, really great editor, and she helped my essays sound more English. So she was very helpful. I'm sure there was more people. Veronica was helpful during mock interviews when there's I don't know if she still does it anymore, but Veronica Mitchell, she would offer mock interviews to students before they went to interview in medical schools. It could be a pretty nerve-wracking process. So there's definitely, that's definitely something that you could do to, you know, alleviate some tension and become more prepared.
All right.
So you've mentioned that you applied to medical school your junior year and you got in during the second half of your senior year. What made you avoid taking a gap year? So here, according to the statistics, we see that the average matriculating age of a med school student is 24, which means that they took at least one gap year before they matriculated. How come you didn't? What makes you the exception?
Thank you. I don't want to say I'm the exception because I am, because more than 50% of students do take a gap year, but most of my roommates actually went straight through as well without a gap year. But I'll say that I was one of the youngest students on campus in my year. So people were like 25, 26. A lot of people are married. Some even have kids. So if you go in without a gap year, you're definitely going to see that you're one of the younger people. But basically, I feel like I was able to, when Samuel asked me about like what I did for my application, one of the things I did was research. I did cancer research in Kentucky. And I also did research on autism in, Samuel, where's that research center?
It's the Curley Lab at Mount Sinai. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, at Mount Sinai. So basically, I feel like I was able to not take a gap year and go straight through because I had research under my belt, I had volunteering under my belt, as well as clinical experience and a good GPA, it's honestly pretty hard to manage. So if you feel like, you know, there's something lacking in your application and you don't want to rush things, it's normal to take a gap year. More than half of students nowadays take a gap year before entering medical school. So if you believe you can apply without a gap year, that's great. But if you find yourself needing more time to expand and strengthen your application, that's completely fine. Most of my friends are just starting medical school, and I'm in my third year now. So like maybe 4 of my good friends just started medical school, and that's totally fine as well. You know, everyone has their own path to medicine. So you should just be honest with yourself and your strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
I admire the focus. So from your very first year at Hunter College, you're like, I'm going to be a doctor. And you essentially finished 4 to 5 years worth of material and experiences in 3.
Yeah, I remember. Thank you. I remember in my second semester of freshman year, they said one of my advisors, she's not there anymore, but Benjamin Ross was a great YALO advisor. I think he's in Macaulay now, but he told me like you need to take 2 sciences every semester. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that because I just took 1 science and it was difficult enough as it is. And he's like, do you want to graduate on time? And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, okay, well then you're going to take 2 sciences. So basically, like, you know, you kind of have to sacrifice some stuff if you want to make it in 4 years. But if not, you know, potentially you could have a more light schedule, maybe make more time to work or do something on the side. But yeah, it's challenging to balance all of those things for sure. For sure.
So with that comes work-life balance, right? So none of us are robots and we can't work all day long. So what would you say are kind of like in undergrad, at least, what would you use to like balance your life and just make things more or less bearable or enjoyable?
I'm actually a robot. No. So basically in a Hunter, there's a gym and it's free. So that was basically, I found myself
Mhm.
going maybe 3 or 4 times a week. On weeks when there were exams, it was more difficult. But the Hunter gym was definitely a place that I was often, blowing off steam. I
Mhm.
like to play basketball a lot, so I would play basketball with my friends whenever the opportunity presented itself. Um, Tennis sometimes, but mostly basketball. There's a big basketball environment in Hunter College, so you could definitely, whenever there's like hours. I think it's not always open. It could be open from like 2 to 4, so you have to find opportunities to engage in sports and stuff.
Yeah.
What else did I do? I also like to write songs on the side, so I like writing songs and going recording to the studio. In college you find maybe you'll find less, you have less free time for yourself, but the free time that you do have, you definitely want to do things that you still like. You don't want to forget about your talents and your
Mhm.
passions, so try to, whatever you're interested in, if it's dance, go, try to do that a few times a week. Whether it's video games, anything that brings
Yeah.
you some joy. But yeah, I mostly focus on music and sports. Those are my two biggest outlets
Mhm.
throughout
And I would
throughout
assume
college.
that in medical school you would say really the exact same thing, right? But just more intense in that you have less time, and so you would need to really hone in on what you enjoy, right? Because you
Yeah.
just get less and less time. So
Yeah, I feel like in medical school, I feel like I had less time for sure, but that doesn't mean like you stop doing everything that you like to
mhm.
do. Like there were, especially in the first month or two when I first started medical school, it was kind of like a shock because so much material. There's a saying, it's like trying to drink out of a fire hose. That's how
Mhm.
much material is getting
Yeah.
thrown at you in medical school. So eventually you learn how to balance that. But initially I was definitely not going to the gym, probably gained 10 pounds, was like pretty out of shape. But then eventually you get into the groove of things and you start figuring out how you work best. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely music and gym has been consistent for me throughout both college and medical school. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also hanging out with friends, like an occasional, like this Friday, I'm gonna go party with my friends till tomorrow.
Okay.
Just
Cool.
just because, yeah, I'm on my elective now, and electives are typically not as difficult as core rotations.
Mhm.
Electives in New York Medical College, electives are 2 weeks long, while core rotations are from 4 to 6 weeks. And core rotations such as pediatric surgery, OB-GYN, they have a shelf exam at the end of it, but electives don't have an exam. So you can kind of come home and you don't necessarily have to study because there's no metric that you have to be prepared for.
Mhm.
So
Wouldn't that all come back at you during step 2 though? Or are they or do they only feature the core rotations?
it's mostly the core. It's more
Okay.
focused on the core. Yeah, because there's so many electives to choose from that it wouldn't be fair if the electives were tested because for example, there's an elective called thoracic surgery. I'm not gonna do that elective, but the next student is gonna do it. So it
Mhm.
would be unfair. It would be unfair for it to be tested on step two if not everyone had that exposure. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Artem, but would you like to ask him about the study resources that he used in medical school, particularly ones that we could also use for let's say preparation for the MCAT, because I know there is an interlab.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to figure out what study resources you use compared to medical school versus undergrad, and like how your like material or like how the way you perceive the material has changed. I know medical school has a lot of reputation for being like memorization based, but I understand that this is not completely true. Would you be able to elaborate on all that?
Of course, Mr. Artem Belugan. Um, so basically, in college, I mostly used lectures. So, for example, in bio, Dr. Alai was my professor. So I would just come to lecture. I used to handwrite all my notes, but I don't know. I feel like nowadays in college, everyone mostly types. But I would mostly use just lectures, flat out, nothing else. In college, And then in medical school, I found myself kind of moving away from lectures more and more and using outside resources, such as, I don't use Anki, but Anki is a tool that a lot of medical students use, and I feel like it's becoming more popular in college as well. It's basically a tool that shows you flashcards, and if you know something, you can click, like, for example, easy, and then you'll see it in 4 days. But if it's difficult for you, you can click hard, and then it's gonna pop up in like 20 or 30 minutes. So it's basically a tool that keeps refreshing your knowledge. So because repetition is what allows you to memorize all these facts in medical school. So Anki is a tool that a lot of people use. It's a free app. You guys can, all the viewers, if you guys want, you can try it out, see if it works for you. Besides Anki in medical school, a tool that everyone uses is UWorld. I know that there's a push for UWorld to be implemented in a lot of people's MCAT studying. It has like a lot of practice questions. So I recommend UWorld definitely. I didn't use it for MCAT, but I believe it's a good tool for MCAT studying as well. When you're taking step 1, which is the board exam you take in the end of your second year in medical school, 100% of students use UWorld. Everything else could be, okay, I use this, I use that, I don't use this, I don't use that, but UWorld is like every single student uses UWorld. So if you want to become familiarized with the questions and just the interface, I guess you can start in college when studying for the MCAT. And then also there's a lot of resources that you use in medical school that are not really, if I told it to you guys now, it wouldn't make sense. But for example, Pathoma is this doctor that teaches pathology very well. Artem, do you want me to go into the details about those kind of things? Or?
Well, Boards and Beyond, right?
Boards, yeah, I was going to mention Boards and Beyond. It's basically, for example, cardiology, which is the heart, nephrology, which is the kidneys. He has like really concise, detailed videos on every single system. And I completely stopped using lectures in second year of medical school because there were just so many lectures. There was no way I was going to catch up with everything. So I just stopped using lectures completely. And then I started using Boards and Beyond videos. It's just a yearly subscription. I think it's like $200 or $300. It's really worth it because he practically saved my life for step 1. So if you guys get into medical school, fingers crossed one day, Boards and Beyond is definitely a good resource to check out.
And yeah, so from what I understand, a lot of these resources, like you found out about them either through other peers or Reddit. So I just wanted to reiterate that Reddit is extremely helpful for like finding where to get these resources. A lot of students like want to get into medical school, want to study hard, have the work ethic, but they simply don't know how to channel it in a most efficient manner. And Reddit definitely helps because it's a forum which everyone shares their experiences in, and you get to learn from other people's mistakes and other people's achievements.
For sure, but just to add on, like, always take it with a grain of salt, because I've had people that told me, like, if you don't use Anki, which is that tool that I told you guys about, like the flashcard tool, if you don't use Anki, you're not going to be successful. And that's a load of, you know what it is, a load of BS. Because I don't use Anki, and I'm pretty successful in medical school just because I don't find that thanks. Appreciate it. I don't find Anki to be helpful for me personally, but I know some of my friends that would fail without Anki because they rely on it so much, you know? So just because someone says this is a must, take it with a grain of salt, try it out. It's not for you, move on to the next thing. Everyone has their own style. But of course, Reddit is a good place to find the resources that you can, you know, trial and error, see what works for you, see what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that some of those study resources cost money. And money's on the next money's the next topic on the list.
Oh,
but
that
was
a beautiful segue. Yeah.
Thank you. I think our next 2 questions can be kind of like compiled into one. So it really just addresses the financial aspect of medical school, whether it's you know, like career endeavors or business endeavors, let's say, whether it be through private practice or not, and also how, like, whether you have any opinions on, I guess, student loan debt, or how much it costs to attend medical school.
Okay, my opinion is that student loan debt is not good. Well, obviously I'm oversimplifying it. Some medical schools are way more expensive than others. New York Medical College is on the more expensive side. I forget off the top of my head, but I believe it's around maybe $72,000 a year, which is on the higher end.
Wow.
I know some DO schools are like, or osteopathic schools are like maybe 40,000. I believe LECOM is closer to 40,000. It's in Lake Erie. This is an expensive endeavor for sure. So it's 70,000. Some students are eligible, at least in New York Medical College. I don't think it applies to all schools, but it's something called a need-based grant. So if your income falls below a certain threshold, you're eligible for a need-based grant. In New York Medical College, they give out $10,000 for people that are eligible for this grant. So definitely, when you're starting school, talk to your financial advisor about any grants or rewards that you would be eligible for, because like I said, this is, it's a lot of money. Even though you're going to make it back, you're going to make the money back. You're going with a pretty well-paying field, but still, it could be scary to see such a big number, but it's okay. Everyone pays it off eventually, despite the interest that accumulates. And also there was a freeze in interest. I think, I'm not going to pay interest up until January of next year because of the whole COVID thing. So our interest was frozen. So I think for over a year, my loans have not accrued any interest for over a year, which is really good. The one good thing that came from COVID,
Would you be able to, I know you mentioned a DO degree and MD degree. Would you be able to just like clarify the differences between an MD or a DO and how that differs from also an NP and a PA degree? Well,
okay.
Yeah, license, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So basically MD and DO are both physicians. They're both degrees that allow you to practice medicine. And once you get a degree, you become a physician. The difference is it's starting to become a more historical difference. Before there used to be, even now to a certain degree, there's a kind of like there's this theory, stigma. Or not theory, but like there's a stigma about DO schools or osteopathic schools versus MD or allopathic schools. So basically, from what I hear, if you're a DO, it's harder for you to get into like more competitive specialties, such as dermatology, plastic surgery, etc. But my dermatologist personally is a DO, so like it's possible, even if you go to an osteopathic school or DO school, it's still possible for you to be very successful and go into one of the top paying specialties. It's just going to be harder for you, probably because of the stigma that unfortunately still exists. And as far as what the difference between the two go, they're both physicians. They're both practicing physicians. The difference, sometimes DO physicians use something called I think it's called OMM, osteopathic manipulative medicine. I don't really know exactly what it is, to be honest, but you use your hands to correct like certain or alleviate pain in certain conditions. I'm not an osteopath, so I don't really know the exact difference, but it's becoming more and more similar. The only thing is that there is a stigma against DO schools or DO students. So it might be harder for you if you want to go into surgery or something like that. You might want to try your best to get into an MD school or an allopathic school. But if you're interested in like pediatrics or something less competitive, endocrinology, things of that nature, and you get into a DO school, by all means, like you will have a good career. So you shouldn't be too worried about it. Oh, and PA, physician assistant or now becoming associate, there's like a little controversy around what PA is. And then NP, nurse practitioner. I don't really know too much about those degrees, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. So regarding your future career dreams, so I understand after residency where you get paid $60,000 a year to work approximately 80-hour work weeks. Besides that, after you finish that, you become an attending, right? With an attending salary. What are your dreams? What is your ideal career? Inpatient, outpatient, private practice, hospitalist?
Yeah, ideally I want to have a private practice just because I want to have control over, I want to have more flexibility as far as like my work hours. And then also I want to be able to choose who I work with. So like I could hire people that, we create a cohesive team, everyone gets along with each other. There's a good rapport between the staff. That's very important to me because I'm currently in a private practice in ophthalmology, and I see how well the physician works with the technician, and the patients also like that because everyone's so comfortable with each other. So I want to create a good work environment. And then also it is higher pay if you have a private clinic for the most part, despite paying rent, maintenance fees, paying the salary of your colleagues. Like, for example, say if you're a physician and you're paying a nurse or a PA or a technician, that comes out of your pocket. So there's expenses that you need to think about. But for the most part, I'm thinking private just because it provides me with more autonomy as far as like my hours and and who I work with. Yeah.
I got you. And thank you so much for saying all of this. Do you mind giving any advice to incoming pre-meds? So there's going to be a lot of listeners on this, and they also want personalized tips.
To all 5 listeners out there, what's the question?
Do you have any tips for pre-meds or people thinking of applying to medical school?
Yeah, so basically a good tip is try not to spread yourself too thin. So you're always going to see people that come at you and they're going to say like, well, you don't have research. Like I have 4 publications, or like you're not in Red Cross. Like I've been in Red Cross for 6 years, even though I started med school, even though I started college 1 month ago. There's always going to be like, we call them gunners in medical school. So basically people that try to just go crazy. Try to find stuff that works for you. If you have like 30 different experiences, but your GPA is like really bad, no one's going to care about your 30 experiences. Versus if you have 5, 6, 7, something more, more focused, more time consuming, things that you actually put a lot of effort into, that's gonna look better. So try to find things that speak to you, that you're passionate about, and maintain a good GPA. That's very important. My friend, he didn't have the best GPA, so he had to do a master's after he graduated, and then only then could he start medical school afterwards, because he had to boost the science GPA. So you want to, the classes, the science classes in Hunter can be challenging. Bio 101, it's supposed to be an introduction class, but it's close. It's sort of taught like almost a medical school class. It's maybe not as hard, but still like it's harder than an introductory class. So it's I would say try to maintain a good GPA. Try to have good experiences as far as research, clinical, and volunteering, but not to the point that you're doing so much that you know what I mean? Try to get an executive board position. If you have 30 experiences, there's no way you're gonna be able to have an executive board position in each and every single one. You know what I mean? So that's just some advice that I can give. I'm sure there's more, but those are like the important things. GPA, experiences as far as research, clinical, volunteering, and also MCAT. MCAT is pretty damn important. So those 3 things are the most important.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Wait, and also I think did you guys ask me about the differences between college and medical school, or we didn't get to that yet in our conversation?
I mean, I've already mentioned like what I assumed it would be, and you said that is the case, where like your social life and just the time you have for your own personal things like gets less and less, that you are more or less like asynchronous compared to college, where you can really rely on third-party resources, right? Like you have the opportunity to do so. You don't have to attend many of the lectures and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, so in our school, lectures are there's occasionally a mandatory lecture, but for the most part, lectures are optional. And we have a scribe service where basically the lecture is recorded, and then a scribe, like any medical student, can verbatim type up the lecture. So you could just read you could read a Word document of the entire lecture and not even attend it. So, or if you don't want to use lectures, if you don't want to use lectures at all, which is what I did in my second year, you just don't have to look at lectures at all, and you could use outside resources like Boards and Beyond. So there's a certain level of autonomy that's good in medical school. Like you get to kind of choose the way you study. You're not expected to use a lecture if you don't want to use a lecture. And also in medical school, you don't have classes like ethics, or actually you do online, but you don't have classes like arts, English.
Yeah.
A lot of classes that you may not be passionate about if you're focused on science. Here it's purely science and nothing else. So although we may only have, for example, biochemistry and pathology, we don't have all those other arts, music classes that can distract you from your main goal of learning the sciences, Even though the 2 classes that we have like a lot of lectures, like maybe 40 lectures for each subject on one exam. So it's a lot of material, but at least it's streamlined and you could have a more narrow approach to what you're studying.
Yeah, and I'm sure many of us look forward to that, because
I remember writing essays about like Othello, and I'm like, this is not gonna benefit me in any way in the future, So I can, I can empathize with that. But it does build, I guess it builds like writing experience if you want to have publications or something. Maybe it'll help, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was notified by Zoom that we recently hit the 40-minute mark. Pretty impressive.
Very.
I just got a unlimited. I got a notice that we have unlimited minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, it seems like we covered it in just about that time, right? Thank you so much for taking the time to give us all this insight. I'm sure you just came fresh off of rotations, right? So, there's a lot that you have to do, but you still found the time. Thank you for that.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for the invite. I appreciate it a lot. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, like reach out to, I guess they could reach out to you guys, and then maybe you'll reach out to me. I don't really know, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I miss anything? Do you guys want to go over anything else, or we're good?
No, you're absolutely great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. You're also great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Bye.
Take care.